Okay, I started the video, but I'm just starting Visual Studio, so I'm going to pause until it's up. Okay, so just file new project as usual. And make sure I do C#, Windows, Universal, right? Just a blank app is good. Can't think of a good name, so I'll think of a bad name for this demo. Hey, what can I say? Just the defaults there, minimum and target. Okay, so here we are, just loading the app XAML.cs file. By the way, one of the things that I think he mentions in his tutorials, but I'm not quite sure, I've looked at so many different tutorials, I can't remember if it's him or not. But whenever you run this, say, especially in the emulator, it really bugs me. Part of the screen is taken up by the little frame counter going on to help. It's good for certain debugging steps, but most of the time I don't want that cluttering up, especially the little emulator screen. So just down here further in the app XAML.cs file, this is the thing here, the enable frame rate counter. You can just set that to false, or if you want, you can just go like this and comment out the whole section. That way it's not even performing the ifs. By the way, see this, the £if means it's checking if you're in actual debug mode, that you're running in debug mode, then it carries out this if. Right? So if you have diagnostics attached, it shows the frame counter. Okay, so I just won't even bother with any of that just by commenting it out. If I ever want it, I just uncomment it out, comment it in, I guess, and away I go. So that's good. I'm just going to close that because I'm done there. All right, main page. So here's our standard basic layout. I usually do the vertical split, right? Just because I find I like to see more of the code, and let's face it, depending on the emulator that you're kind of using as a target design surface, okay, I don't really need all that much space. Notice, of course, you do have your drop down up here, so you can pick different devices during design mode, right? So you can say, well, I kind of want to get a rough idea. Just remember, this is only ever a rough idea of what it's going to look like on an actual device and so on, but I'll just leave it as the default 5-inch phone for now. Microsoft used to talk quite a bit about mobile first, right? And this is a universal app, and eventually I should make sure it can look good and professional on any kind of device, but usually by default you start off aiming for a mobile device and then take it from there, right? Okay, so here's my basic page class here, and of course, being a content control, there's only one element allowed here, and that's my grid, right? So if I tried to put another grid underneath that, I'd get an error, but I can add as many sub-levels to the hierarchy of layout controls here as I want. But for now, I'm just going to use the main grid of the page itself, okay? I could change the background color and so on. We'll get into that kind of thing later on. But obviously, if I'm going to start off with some actual rows and columns, right? For my little demo here, I just would start grid dot, and of course good old IntelliSense is ready to help me, so I can just grab my column definitions or row definitions, it doesn't matter which. Right, and then inside that I'll make a collection of actual column definition objects. And you could do this with properties, but attributes are, if it's available and so on, if you can do it, attributes are less typing, right? So with a column, what I'm looking at is width equals. So what I'm going to do is, just for the fun of it, I don't know, this idea came to me on the weekend, is I'm just going to emphasize the whole star thing, right? So if I'm going to make a whole bunch of columns, but all with one star, okay? So what is that going to do for me? Well, each one takes an equal portion, right? So let's say I have, well, because I want to have a center column, and I'm going to do the same thing with rows, I'll make an odd number in total, okay? Maybe, I don't know, I'll go with 7. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it 6 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? So I should have 7 of those now, okay? So I've defined 7 columns, all of equal width, but they're dynamic. So on different devices, or even if I have it on a PC, you can resize the window, right? It will resize the columns as per the width of whatever the main page here is being given. And I'll do exactly the same thing with the row definitions. So I might save a moment here and do some copy paste from my cheat file. So it's just the same thing. Row definitions, height, 7 of them, each one getting an equal space of whatever there is there. Okay? All right. So as I was saying though, underneath here, I can just start adding other elements and simply specify where they should go. Right? So one of the things that's maybe fun to play with is a button. So if I add a button element, I should give it a name. X name equals, what do I want to call it? If I call it the name I did, it'll give away my goal here, but I'm going to call it mole. That's the name of my button. He's Mr. Mole, right? And, so here I can go grid dot column. Oh, I got 2 dots. Dot column. And maybe I've got 7 in total, right? So 3, because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3, I think, is the middle one.
Oh, it's 0 based?
Yeah, it's 0 based, right? So grid dot row equals 3 as well. So that should put it right in the center of the screen. Now I won't see the grid lines or anything unless I ask for them, right? So this is fine. It'll just be centered in the center of my screen at this point in time. And of course, I can continue on the next line. I can, for now, remember there is no text property. If I try that, there's no such thing in the IntelliSense because it's a content control. But with value converters, I can put anything inside the string here and it will say, okay, what kind of an animal do we have to work with, right? So I could, if I just put text, that's what it'll put. Mole. Okay. So that's basically my button for now. I'll just leave it like that. All right. So there's my button that says mole. Okay. Oh, I'm going to need an event for it too. I find the easiest or safest way to get events going, let me just zoomy, Windows plus, okay, is again the properties window, right? So here, I can click the lightning bolt, there's the click event of my button, double click, and we see that it did the job. It added in the XAML itself, click equals mole underscore click, right? And of course in the code behind page it added the event handler for me. Excellent, just what I wanted. Okay. Now, so let's say that every time I click the mole, I want him to disappear and reappear in a different grid square, right? Well, that gets me into working with attached properties again. So what I'm going to do then is, let's just think about how we would set it hard-coded to a different one, right? So I'll go mole, was the name of my button, dot set value, because that's what we learned. So I can't directly say it. It's not a property of the button, but set value will allow me to say grid dot, and then here I should have row property, comma, and let's say I'm just going to put it in 1, 1. Just hard code that in for now, right? Oh. Hard to see the keyboard. I have it so dark in the room here so you can see from the back of the room. Call me Mr. Lazy. Column property. Okay, so let's give her a try. I'm just running the local machine here. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, so there's my mole, right? Oh, there we go. I clicked it and it moved. Everybody get the idea of what I have in mind here? We played whack-a-mole, right? Okay, so obviously every time I click them, okay, I want them to go to a different random position, right? So that's easily done. All we need is to create a random number generator, right? So maybe I'll come up to the top of the class here. I can make it public in case later on I expand this public, random, and rgen equals new random. And, oh, that darn back of the room. There we go. Okay, so that gives me one. Globally, I can get pretty much anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is, instead of hard coding the value, I could just use my random number generator, rgen, dot next. And I want to specify a range, right? I've got 0 to 6 are the columns and rows, right? So 0, comma 6. And another bracket so I don't get yelled at. Right? There we go. Copy that. Come down here. Oh, I took out an extra bracket by accident. There we go. All right. So we'll run it on our local machine. And notice I can expand it full screen, right? And every time I click my button now, my mole moves to a different spot. Yee! Okay? Is that exciting? What, I think I can sell this and make $1 million? Yeah?
Nowadays.
All right. So anyway, the point was to show you how to access attached properties and so on. But you know, while we're here, we could play with a couple more fun things, right? What's missing from our game? Yeah, a picture of a mole for sure, right? And what else?
A timer.
A timer
Every
for
2
yeah,
seconds it moves.
yeah. We could do that. Or actually, I think I would just count how many times they've clicked. Give them a minute, right? And then count how many clicks and you know, how many times they're able to whack the mole in a given time span. Maybe something like that. But for now, what's another thing definitely missing for an interactive feeling game? Don't you like to hear that when you smack the mole?
Yeah.
Right? A sound. Okay? So maybe that's what we'll do next, is we'll add the sound to this. All right, so we need to get a sound. For sound, let's go to a website. I've got Blackboard open here. Sound Bible's a good one. You feel free to let me know a few of your favorites. Soundbible.com. Okay, free sound effects and so on. Let's check royalty free. We don't want to get in trouble here at the school, right? And royalty free sounds. I don't want to loop through. Let's look for something like a whack kind of a sound. Okay, here. Do my speakers work? Okay, that's probably not bad. In its public domain, I could spend a long time looking and finding other ones, but that's going to do the job for now. So I can download a WAV file, an MP3. You know, WAV file is good, right? So I'll just right-click. I want save target as. Save link as. Image. Well, let me just, maybe if I just click it. Ah, there we go. Save file. All right, so that just put it in my downloads folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from there. Well, I could just copy whatever. And where is my project? Is it in Documents, Visual Studio? Projects. That's a bad name for a project. Oh dear. Oh man, I throw it in asset. I mean, if this was going to be a more ambitious project, I'd get more organized and make, you know, a folder for sounds and one for graphics and so on. But hey, they're all assets for now, so I'll just stick it in assets and paste it in here. Pretty long name, right? So I'm going to change that name to whack. Okay, so it's in the assets folder, but if I go back to Visual Studio, right, it's not going to show up here until I add it to the actual project. Otherwise, it doesn't get added in the manifest and everything else. So I'll right-click Assets, Add Existing Item, and come into the Assets, and there's my whack sound, right? So I've got that. Now for the sound, to get the sound to work, I could do it all in code, but this is a great example. If you look it up, you're looking at, like, you know, about 6 lines of C# code to instantiate the element and set its properties. It's one tiny snippet of XAML. So why not just put in the XAML of the page? It all gets compiled to C# objects in the end, and it's far, far easier to do so. So it's just a media element tag, right? So if I go back to the main page, maybe right under the button here, media element. There we go. I have to give it a name, X colon, name. I don't know, I can just call it sound or whack or something like that. And this is so easy, just source, right? Source equals assets backslash whack, W-H-A-C-K. I have to go the extension though, and I downloaded a WAV file, right? I know my file system isn't showing extensions, but that doesn't matter. Okay, now there's one more property that we want to set here. By default, autoplay will be true. In other words, as soon as the page loads, it would make the sound. We don't want it to do that, just want to do it when we call for it to play the sound, right? So autoplay equals false. There's my mouse. Okay. And we'll just close that off like that. So that gives us our media element. It's much easier to do that than to write those 6 lines of C# code and so on and so forth.
Is it the same syntax with videos as well? Pretty much?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So coming back here then, all right. I could just say sound. That's the name that I gave the element on the XAML dot play. So let's just see how that runs now on the local machine here. Now you notice something, if I'm really quick, which doesn't happen very often, you don't get the sound. Now if I chose a fairly short duration sound, right? But the problem is, if it's still playing, it won't play again, right? If you had a much longer playing sound, then you'd be in real trouble. Just to show you for fun, I think I have, did I put it up here? Yeah, I did. Let me just, I'll just stop this running for a second. If I go back to the main page XAML here, you know what, I'm just going to come over here for the source. If you want to use built-in sounds that Windows has, okay, I looked this up. I can post this whole list for you. Oh, inside the quotes. Oh, I copied instead of pasted. Okay, sorry. Let me put that down on the next line. Okay, so there's just our default sound. But this is a little longer one, so I'll probably be able to cause it to miss the sound quite often, right? Because it's, we can do ringtones and everything else if you want to. Yeah?
You can't like check and code if it's playing and stop it and play it again.
Okay, that was I was about to do that. I was going to say this is the problem. Now we'll fix it by checking if it's playing and stopping it. Okay, actually that's almost exactly what we do, right? So going back to the code behind, instead of just saying play, we need an if. And basically, let me just make sure I can get it right the first time. Sound. Oh, gotta set my insertion point. Dot current state. Compares to media element state dot, might as well get the enumeration right, playing, right? So if it's playing, then we want to stop it, right? So we don't actually stop it, that doesn't work. But what we can do is, there is fortunately a position control. The position of how many milliseconds through the sound file it is currently playing. So you can use that. You can make your own little fast forward and rewind buttons on a media element and so on by utilizing the ability to access and change the position, right? So I can just go sound dot position equals, now the position is a time span. Right, so I have to actually create a time span object in order to do this. Time span of 0. So that just puts the position back to the very, very beginning, right? Else, if it's not playing, then I'll move my sound.play command up into the else, right? Okay. I'm going to make this easier on myself. I'm still not very quick. Okay. All right, so you see it is working, that if it hasn't played, when I click it, it just puts it right back to the beginning and we're all set. So that solved that problem. Now, the next main thing, of course, is the fact that it's pretty ugly. At least we should have a picture of a mole on there, right? So I did grab one earlier. So let me see if I can add existing item. I'll just browse for it here. I think I downloaded. I think this one here works pretty good. Okay. So, that's the mole. Now, a couple other things I'd want to change about the button itself. Right now, the XAML for the button, there's default properties for like some border around it, the square grid that it sits in, and so on and so forth. We can strip all that out quite easily. So, I'm just going to grab my code and then I'll show it to you. So I'll replace this button. Okay, so all we've really done is I've set horizontal alignment to stretch, vertical alignment to stretch. So basically the button will try to fill whatever its container is, right? Padding of 0 and border thickness 0. So I won't see the border of the button at all. Same click event, okay? But to add an image, I'm missing my closing button tag. Sorry. Button. Right. To put the image on the button, I can't do that just with a simple attribute assignment. I do it as a property, right? So here I have an image. Source is the asset, the little picture of the mole's head, right? Stretch equals fills, just so it fills the room on the button itself. So it should be fairly dynamic. I'm not guaranteeing the aspect ratio will always be right, but at least it'll pretty much look like a mole now anyway. All right. And he does get a little smaller, right, as I change the, I can even play with it, get him looking a little more like a, okay, you get the idea. I mean, obviously it's, it's not quite ready for, we would want to add a timer, some sort of a counter, some feedback to the user, you've got the high score, you've whacked the mole 15 times in the 30 seconds allowed or whatever, however you want to do your game. But really, we just had a bit of fun with a couple of XAML markups, gave us a chance to see using a media element in a very basic way for the sound, how you can have a button not look like a button at all, and most important lesson I want to drive home here is how to work with the attached properties. Maybe I'll just deploy this to my phone, just so we can try that out. Can I get you to just plug that into one of the USB ports for me? Anyone else have a Windows phone? Want to have our little bad name application on it? Okay. So in the phone, I just go in and set the mode to developer exactly the same way you do in settings on the PC. Now, notice that I'm compiling here for an x86. That's not going to work on my phone because it's an ARM processor. So I'll change it to ARM, right? As I do so, notice that the choices down here become less. Oh, sorry, over here. Okay? Remote machine or device, right? So you can set up a remote machine and actually do it to the network, or with the device connected now to the USB cable, I can just select device.
Is there anything else that you had to do with your computer to allow this connection? This developer mode and that's it?
That's it. It used to be you had to, do a whole routine where you had to unlock the device and so on, but not with Windows 10 anymore. You just change the setting on it, say it's developer unlocked. Deployment errors, continue. Well, what did I get? Bootstrapping failed, device could not be found, deployment failed. Let me just check here. Should be fine. I'll just unplug it and plug it back in again. Did you turn it off and on? Okay, it made a sound, so it seems to think it has it. I don't remember hearing that the first time, so maybe that was it. I just didn't have it pushed in all the way. I'll just pause the recording. Thank you. All right. And you can see it's up on my phone. I can even stop it here. But it's actually installed on the phone now. I can disconnect the phone. Oh, it's right there at the top. Bad name. Recently added applications. My volume's turned down. Oh, I'm not getting the sound.
Now, with the Windows 10 sound system, does that translate to the phone as well? Like
Yeah.
internal?
Yeah, because I did this at home earlier and it worked perfectly with the sound and everything, so I'm not quite sure what's happening, why I'm not getting sound. Oh well, I'll maybe try it again, but that's good for now. Any questions about that little demo?
Will debugging mode work while using
Yeah, actually, if I'd left it connected, I could have actually debugged it running on the phone. It's good to set breakpoints and walk through it and everything else. Yeah, good question though. No, I disconnected it. Obviously, I had to stop running to. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not